Welcome to the second episode of the Pioneers Conclave. My name is Dhruv Joshi, and today, as the co host for the episode, we have my colleague Ayushi Karande. Coming to the guest for the episode, it's a very special day today for us as we have a very first global guest on the show, Mr. Terry Torok. Mr. Terry Torok is the Chief Innovation Officer at Enactus. He conducts adventure learning workshops for serious social entrepreneurs and innovators interested in changing the world for good. Mr. Terry has also worked with A-list artists and global brands who are interested in entertaining the bigger picture. Mr. Terry is also a pioneer in esports and experiential learning. He's the producer of the Global Goals Forum and the Enactus World Cup. We are really honored to have you on the show, sir.
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We at the Entrepreneurship Cell and Skill Hub are very delighted to have you. And as they very famously say, we rise by lifting others, and that's social entrepreneurship for most of us. So, we're very honored to have you on board to know more about this, and we're very excited to speak with you.
Dhruv, it's great to be here. You have such a great name. Ayesha, it's good to see you too. I really enjoy my time whenever I get to be in Mumbai. So if this is the closest I can do, so be it. Great to be here. By the way, I love your podcast and I love who your listeners are. They're really smart, really forward thinking. They've got good hearts. It's good to be here. Namaste.
After such a great introduction, let's begin with our question for the podcast. And being the first question, I would like to keep it very basic. So, sir, what is social entrepreneurship for you, and why did you choose to engage in social entrepreneurship as opposed to conventional business? So, what was your thought process like when you were taking this decision?
Yeah, thank you, Dhruv. Thank you for the question. Well, social entrepreneurship for me is leading with your values. It also, for me personally, it's leading with values and verbs, leading with the right energy, leading with positive energy, seeing a great outlook for the world. For me, social entrepreneurship and social innovation, often one and the same, is the pathway forward. For me, a brand that doesn't stand for something today will fall in the near future. Social entrepreneurship are those that have that head for business and a heart for the world, who are measuring something more than profits. They're measuring something a little more than prosperity. They're measuring impact for people, planet, and prosperity. So it's a matter of taking business and taking that extra step and say, we're here to be sustainable for our business, but we're also looking out for vulnerable populations. We're looking out for vulnerable environments, and we're looking out for prosperity overall, how we can share the wealth and how we can grow. And really, when it comes down to it, Dhruv, it's the difference between the pursuit of happiness or the happiness of pursuit. So a lot of entrepreneurs out there are driven by getting to that place, getting to that place, getting to that place. On your way to the place is the time to pull the beautiful energy, that verve, that happiness. Find it now, otherwise it will be elusive in the future.
You mentioned about finding it right now, and from this statement, I choose the word now. And so, do you think that in this pandemic that is affecting a lot of countries currently, social entrepreneurship is the need of the hour?
Yeah, the reason we know that to be absolutely unequivocally true is that the lack of social innovation or the lack of social entrepreneurship shows up in our weather. It shows up in reduced inequality or inequalities between the huge gap between those who have and those who have not. It shows up everywhere. It shows up in vulnerable environments. It shows up in pollution in our oceans. The lack of social entrepreneurship and the lack of social innovation is polluting our planet. It is clouding our skies, and it's also clouding our mind. So the proof of not endeavoring social innovation and social entrepreneurship is so profound that we know we need to change the world for good. So this is the moment in time for social innovators and social entrepreneurs. We were born for this year. And I believe, Dhruv, that the year of 2020 is the year of vision. It is the year that we could do our very best. It is the year we were made for, born for, and it's our chance to turn the corner.
Absolutely, sir. This was very much insightful, and I'm sure that our listeners would be pumped up right now and would be excited to hear the entire conversation coming up. So, as I mentioned earlier, that you've been a part of Enactus since the past 6 years and have actively organized the Enactus World Cup. So, how do you think social entrepreneurship has changed over the years, like in terms of, say, business ideas or any in thought process or any way you think they have changed since the past few years?
I love Enactus, and I'm glad you guys are part of Enactus. And for any of your listeners who haven't had an opportunity to understand or know what Enactus is, should look to do so right away. Just go to enactus.org, check it out, look it up. And as we evolve Enactus, we're looking for more and more ways to involve more and more people. Those that you don't have to be in college. You can contribute in many, many ways. But some of the things that I love about Enactus is from the very start. I was working in the social space in Uttar Pradesh, in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Middle East. I had the privilege and pleasure of working on maternal and child health. I had the privilege and honor of working in refugee camps and displaced people camps. Had the opportunity to work on malaria. And so I had a view and a real opportunity to see humankind at its most challenging moments, when you are often overwhelmed by the world's challenges, surrounded by desperation, surrounded by poor health, surrounded by poor water conditions, and at some point you get overwhelmed. And I had an opportunity to go directly from working in townships in sub-Saharan Africa, as well as my time in Uttar Pradesh, to Sao Paulo, Brazil, where I saw my first Enactus national competition. And there I met students who were the sea of solutions. It was a sea change. They had energy, they had verve, they had passion and power and purpose. And they were performing on stage with these pitches that were unbelievable. And I said, wow, my view of seeing the world as all challenges is now an opportunity to see the world as something beautiful. And so Enactus did that for me. Now, there are many avenues to do that that are similar to Enactus, but Enactus is very formulaic in experiential learning and having the power of guidance from academic advisors that help support the right theory, help support needs assessment. And Enactus brings together like-minded team members who are passionate about this space, who are great storytellers, who are great marketers, coders, I think some just super cool students who are out there to see the world in a very, very different and beautiful way. And so for that, Enactus is a fantastic opportunity to not only be a student, but be in Enactus for life, become an alumni, and then become part of the organization, drive the organization into a growing and beautiful future.
Right, right. So as I mentioned earlier in the question itself, so what is that one change which you feel that social enterprises have changed through the years? So you have been interacting with social entrepreneurs since the past 6 years now. So what do you think that is changed in the past 6 years? Maybe it could be like their working culture or anything. So what is your take on that? What is the change which they have undergone?
Sure, there's two things, Drew. There's things where social entrepreneurship has been absolutely consistent over time. And then there's a piece and definition of social entrepreneurship by its very definition is dynamic and innovative. Those two key pieces asks social entrepreneurs and social innovators to continue to consider change. So the very consistent in nature of social innovation and social entrepreneurship is change itself, adapting to change, not being upset by change, but actually leading change. The key thing that has been a steady about social entrepreneurship is that undying passion, that true north, that understanding that says it is just as important to me to create impact, measure that impact, as it is to create profits. And that for a social entrepreneur should be the steady, is that as important it is to be sustainable and measure profits or prosperity is the same rigor and importance to measure impact. And the two are not separate. The two live together as one. That's a fundamental difference between a traditional business and a social entrepreneur. They care just about as much as not creating a negative impact, no carbon footprint, no detriment to the planet, or as least footprint as possible, and then driving prosperity. It should be important for us to drive and share profits so that we can take care of ourselves, we can take care of our families, and then we can take care of others.
So that's absolutely right. And as of now, how you strongly spoke about passion, coming to that, there are a lot of students who enroll themselves with NGOs or social ventures or anything related to social work just because of the title that being a part of a social venture provides them. And they're not really passionate about the work they do, they're just there for the sake of it and the title that it provides them. So, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, Ishi, there's two things I ask students to look out when they're checking when they're checking with other organizations. Two things to really look out for. Does the organization set social work over here and then business opportunity over here? Does it set, hey, that's our charity work and this is the work that we're going to do for ourselves to make a living? When you separate those two, you learn a different muscle, and it's not holistic. It's not part of life. It's not, hey, I'm going to go make some money, and then one day I'm going to have enough to give it away. That day may never come. So practice early on how you can make a living and give your living and live a life. Bring those two pieces together. How does charity and your own personal pathway, your own personal career come together? And even your own personal goals. So when you think about your personal goals and you say, yeah, I'm going to do charity, I'm going to do good giving over here in that pile. And then my career is going to be over here in that pile. And then over here is my personal goals. Bring those three goals together. Look at how they relate to each other. Literally, when you hear this today, you hear this podcast, write down three different spaces. What is my goal in personal career? What is my goal in my personal life? What is my goal in living? And help those three work together. Even if you are in a career or in a school where you don't yet realize your personal goals, you don't yet have the opportunity to have that goal over here. It is important to articulate to your boss, to your colleagues, to yourself, what your personal goals are. For all of the people who have ever worked for me, or I've ever had the privilege of working with great teams, I always try to ask about their personal goals. Because if they keep that hidden, I will never get the best of them. And they will never give me the best of them either. I need to, as a good boss, respect what those personal goals are. Listen, understand, provide a safe space, develop true trust, unbroken trust, to understand what those other goals are, to see if we can support that into a career path.
Correct, correct. So you rightly mentioned that one cannot pre-decide that he would earn a lot of money and then later in life use a portion of that as charity, because nothing is certain. You don't know whether this situation that you're talking about or thinking would actually end up happening in life. So there's nothing certain. And you also mentioned that you should how you should use your three goals and make it like one single plan for yourself. But the thing is, sir, that when one starts a social venture which is benefiting the society simultaneously as well as gets revenue for his personal use, it comes with a set of problems. One being that it's very difficult to last that venture for a long time, because he does not know till what extent can he finance it himself unless he gets a very big funding in the initial stage. So what is your take on this situation?
So that's not only true in social ventures, it's true in life. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to start up, you Probably fund from your own pocket, from your own heart, from your own mind, giving time, treasure, and that talent that you have. You're going to invest in yourself anyway, and you should invest in yourself. Time is the most precious out of all of those. So either way, you are invested. The key is to identify what it is you need to be sustainable, knowing that you don't have it yet. So Drew, a good example. Earlier, I talked to a group in Delhi that had created face masks, okay?
Yeah.
And they were fundraising around the face masks. And they were distributing those face masks. And that is, in one degree, a social venture, okay? So they looked at the price of those face masks, and they fundraised around the price of just those face masks. But it was them delivering those face masks. So when you think about it, is they funded for the product, but they forgot to fund for the service, which is themselves. And so oftentimes when we have an organization like Enactus, it is critical that we fund ourselves. We are the ones on the front line doing the work, providing the opportunity. There is no such thing as they. I learned this from a good friend of mine, Hoffman. There is no they, it is only us. So when you look at funding, make sure you cover yourself. You are the service provided attached to that product, and you are critical. That piece of the business, by the way, it wasn't the face mask piece that could grow. It was them as service. Every time they had a touch point handing out a face mask, they were providing information. So the next thing that they could provide is something else. They could provide non-plastic straws. They could provide bottled water. They could provide that service they forgot to value in the very, very early days. So when you look at your business plan, and I will provide for you, Drew, and all of your listeners, a business canvas model that will help exactly with that question. I want to provide it to you for free. I will provide you that document. And if you look at it and you fill it all out, you will find yourself profitability. You will find yourself greater purpose. You will find how to measure impact, and you will see where you don't have yet. And it's okay. When you start out, you won't have all the pieces and parts, but you soon will.
Right, sir. So you correctly mentioned, and it's a saying as well, that an investor usually does not invest in an idea, but he looks at the person. He invests in the person presenting it or rather executing it. So, sir, but the thing is that when a person starts off with a venture and he faces failure early in his life or career, that is, say, maybe he's not receiving funding for a couple of rounds, or his product is not being sold in the market, and which leads to a lot of negativity around him. He's facing failure early in his life, right? So what is your take on the term failure, and how should one cope up with it?
So let's talk about failure in a moment, but let me tackle your first piece about team versus project. So people will invest in a great team. That's a great human with great promise. And if I see that your team has values, vision, mission, and your team has organizational health, your team is cohesive, communicating, great values, I will invest in that team before I will invest in a project. If they come to me with a project, then I invest in that project. I don't want failure. I'm not going to see you through failure. I'm not tolerating failure. But if I like you as a team, I will see you through your failure, and that will help you because I like you guys. You guys are long-term, and that's all good. It's a fundamental difference, making sure that your team is super, super solid. Failure. You asked about failure. A lot of professors, a lot of people, a lot of talks, there's a lot of TED Talks out there in the world that will say, failure is good, failure is lesson, you must fail to succeed. And it's all true, kind of. There are places where I will contend you are not allowed to fail, and you shouldn't fail. You shouldn't fail vulnerable populations. You should no longer fail our environment. You should no longer fail the planet. Stop failing. You want to go fail, go experiment in some other place where everybody knows that you're experimenting, and that's your learned failure opportunity. When you're out there working with vulnerable populations, who have been failed all of their lives, don't fail them. Do not fail them. If you want a lesson in failure, make sure that what you're doing is a project everybody understands they could fail. Remove the vulnerability. And I'm saying it is okay to fail in those environments as long as everybody involved knows that if you fail, you've given them an opportunity or a safety net or a way out. If you go into a vulnerable community with a project with lots of energy, lots of value, lots of verve, and then you leave, you didn't fail yourself, you failed others. I beg you not to do that kind of failure. That kind of failure is paramount. That kind of failure is hard to, it's hard to be responsible for that environment, for what you have done. It's a big cleanup. So the kind of failure, but the other thing, Dhruv, I would say about failure is, it is one thing to experience our own failure and learn. Great, good for you. You want to do something really hard? Learn other people's failures. We've had a history of thousands and thousands of people who have failed over time. Learn and understand those failures. Look around and look at the planet. If you see trash, if you see plastic, if you see dirty water, if you see no trees, if you see poor, compromised communities, that's a history of failure. Go learn that. Don't do that. So when we talk about learning from failure, learn from humankind's failure first. Let other people fail. Get the lesson. And yeah, if you fail in your lesson along the way, it's okay. It is a good lesson, but reduce your failure because there's a lot to be said for success.
That was indeed a very insightful answer, sir. And saying that, we can now take a short break. We are back after a short break and we are in conversation with Mr. Terry Torok, who is the Chief Innovation Officer at Enactus. And in the conversation henceforth, we will be talking about value, verve, passion, and purpose of social entrepreneurship. So, without wasting more time, let's dive straight into the conversation.
Thank you,
Uh,
Dhruv.
To continue, I really admired how you so positively spoke about failure and did not make it sound like a negative word for someone to go through. So, based on that and based on your beautiful and long journey in this field, what is that one thing that you wish someone would have told you a little earlier when you in your life and when you started off your career? And if you could just talk to your younger self, what would that be?
Yeah, if I could talk to my younger self, I don't know if I would have listened. So there's part of that a lot of people tell you things that it's hard to hear because you have to go experience it yourself. And I think that, in college, I think very much like when I was in your seat, and I have these ambitious mindset that I really wanted to be a reporter, a war correspondent. I wanted to be a journalist from the far corners of the world and travel the far corners of the world and really help tell and share those stories. And I was really ambitious about it, but I didn't have an opportunity to do it straight out of college. And I suppose if I had a lesson to my younger self, it would have said, Terry, be patient. It's okay. It's coming in time. But what you need is time. And I was very impatient. And coming out of college, I got to be in the field of journalism, but not like I liked it. It was in the world of entertainment. It was at a time when entertainment marketing was taking off. Big shows, big concerts, big TV shows. And so every time I endeavored to do one of those, it would turn out that we would win some awards. I started really esports. I am the original gangsta, I'm told, of esports, the first TV show about video game competition, the first arena ever created in Times Square, New York. The first tour traveling around really began with the production and creation that I started, but I wasn't really that into it. I still wanted to do my dream. And there was a lot of flash, a lot of entertainment, and the working on the FIFA World Cup, working with the Olympics, working with big artists like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Rolling Stones, Elton John, Alicia Keys, lots of big things that seem exciting. And at the moment, they were fine, they were good, but it was a moment when I got to talk to those artists or work on a big project that connected cause, that connected with some higher purpose. That's when the conversation changed. So if I told my younger self, don't worry, it's coming, I still would have been wildly impatient. So I think it's okay to be impatient. A lot of times people tell us to be patient. And there are times where we should be patient. But there's also times where it's okay to be absolutely impatient, because time is precious and short. We're here on this spinning ball flying through space for a very short amount of time. It's our home. We got to hang on. And if we're too patient, we may never, ever get it done. So I would have said, Terry, always lead with your values, live your values, communicate your values. Do not depart from integrity. Do not depart from passion. Do not depart from innovation and collaboration. Stay with your values, write down your values, speak to your values, communicate your values. And it's okay to be a little impatient. It's coming in time, and it's up to you to drive faster and further and harder.
Right, sir. So you spoke about impatience, and coming to that, a lot of people are very confused when they start off their journey in this line of work. So, what would you recommend them to take as their first step when they decide that, okay, I need to be on this journey of social entrepreneurship? And what is that one step that you recommend them for making their future better when it comes to working in this field?
Create a map. Make yourself a personal map. And then make a map of your project. A map. It is oftentimes the question of, what is my first step? And the next question back to you should be, where are you standing? If somebody tells you what your next step is without asking you where you are or where you're standing, I would be very aware of the information that's about to come next. For me, it's starting with interested. If somebody asks me, hey, what should my next step be? I need to know, where are you standing? Where are you standing on this? Where are you standing on that? If you don't stand for something, you can fall for everything. Make yourself a map. Look at the map and discuss it to see, where am I on the map? Where are others? There's a great TED Talk, Simon Sinek. He says, start with the why. Well, I ask you, do you know your why? Your why? It's okay. If you got it, start with it. Great, cool. If you don't have it, go fill up a bunch of whats. Figure out your when. Go find your who. And then you can get to your why. But if you look at the map and say, what's my what's? Let's just go get a bunch of what's. Let me go study this, study that. I hate that. I like that. That's cool. That's interesting. Stack up a bunch of what's and then find where your passion is. Go get a bunch of what's if you don't have your why. It's all right. Look at your map and say, hey, who am I doing this for? Self included. Who would I like to do this with? Who would I like to be with in my life? There's a bunch of who's on your map. You don't know all your who's. And then you look at, do I still have my why? Do I have my goals? Not yet. Oh, it's okay. Do I got a partial one? Yeah, go ahead. Write it down on the map. It's all good. But one of the most interesting ones on that whole map, when you write down your what, your who, your how, is your when. The when is often underestimated because we can go in and play video games. We can go text our friends, and man, the when flies right out the window. When goes fast, slow. When are you going to work on your map, your next step? So I would say, make yourself a map. Put at the end of the map. I will also provide this to a suggestion for your listeners, Dhruv, if you want to hand it out. Ayushi, you can also do so. I'll give you a map But you could just put on there your what, your who, your when, your how, and your why. Make yourself a map, and that will help guide you through. So to take a next step, figure out where you stand.
That was a fantastic explanation, including the why, where, what, who, which would eventually answer your when to start or when to get into the next step. So I am of a belief that values would play an important role in predetermining your success of the venture. So values, as in how motivated you are or how passionate you are to run your business. What kind of motivation do you have to continue your business? So I think that values play a lot of role in deciding your success. So my question to you would be, what is your opinion on authentic values of one's working?
Drew, thank you for the question. So authentic values is what's true to you. And I find it's really important for us personally to write down values that we want to live, not necessarily who we completely are, but who we completely want to become. Write those down, those values that are true for you. Don't need to impose those values on others. Those are authentic to you. The ones that you communicate, the ones that you aspire to, the ones that face you each and every day, that drives you to be better. I've written down my personal values. I try to check in with them often. I put them next to me. Even though I know what they are in my heart, I write them down. Somewhere I can see them in the morning where I wake up and say, am I living my values? I check with them. And in the early days when you're developing those values, it's okay to change them. But once you lock them in, keep them locked in for life. It's really important. So authentic values for me, I remember my values as epic. So I aspire and work towards and live epic values. So my E is empathy and energy. Empathy and understanding my audience, understanding others, understanding the pain that they're living, understanding the passion they're living, being interested in them is my E, is my empathy. The other part of the E is energy, to make sure I have the verve, to make sure I bring my best possible energy so that I can share that energy and understand and receive energy from others. So my E is empathy and energy. My P is passion, performance, and purpose. So that P is like, am I passionate? Am I understanding? Am I helping others with their passion? Not just about me, but am I reciprocating? Am I helping people fuel their fire and really make that passion help drive towards their purpose? The I for me is integrity, is the essence of everything. That's the base. Integrity. It's the reason it stands in the middle. Integrity. How do we develop trust from the base of integrity? How do we continue to make sure we're living in integrity? We're speaking truth. We're being truthful. And the other piece of the I, how am I dynamic? How am I continuing to change? How am I continuing to help really cool ideas spread around the world for social good? That's really important in my I. And then the C is creativity and collaboration. I love creativity. It's energizing, it's fun, it's entertaining, it's the art, it's the music, it's all the beautiful stuff that makes life for me more beautiful, more enjoyable, and more exciting. And then the other part of the C is collaboration. How do we share that? How do we work with others? And that takes a lot of work to meet others where they're at. So that I remember my epic values. Now I don't go, unless you ask what those values are, I would share them. But I just remind myself, how can I live the epic values? When we take values into a project, it's not important for the project team leader or somebody to go, yeah, I'll go write your values, here they are. If I gave you my values, you might resist it. That's not right. The way to develop values in a group, a team, or a project is to go through the process yourself. Recognize what everybody else's personal values are. Start with that, share that, talk about that, and then collaborate on how those values can come together to stand for your team, your project, your purpose, your initiative, whatever it is. Those company values are really important to embrace all other values. I have a great process for it. It's the best I've ever seen. A really fun process. It takes a little bit of improv, a little theater, a little excitement, a little energy to come up with team values that at some time on a later date on another podcast in the future, we can talk about how to establish team values. But that's how you start with your personal, authentic values.
So that's very well said. And you just spoke about the C, that's creativity and collaboration. So, based on that, what do you think is more eminent when it comes to your line of work? Is it publicity and making people realize and know what you're doing? Or is it being more concentrated towards the consistency of the creativity in your work and, just making your work better by the days and not really caring about what people think about it, but being content with what you're doing?
So perfect. So we covered basically what I'll share with you, which is the 6 key pieces of a really good business canvas model for good. So we talked about vision, values, purpose. Boom. That's the header. That's the headlines. I'm going to get right to your question because it's perfect. Then we talked about quadrant number 1, team. Living your values. Here's a great team. I will invest in you. I will see you through failures. I want to work on you and be a champion of your success. Quadrant number 2 speaks to exactly your question. Marketing communication, what I would frame as amplification, brand amplification. How are we going to share our story in the world? Number 1, to recognize, yes, I have a story. I have a backstory with my team. I have a story about my passion, and I have a story about my purpose. And if I can make that story so succinct that I can tell that story as little as 77 seconds, or a 7-minute Enactus presentation, or a 12-minute Enactus team presentation, if I can tell that story so compelling that others will pick up that story and share it with the world. So the real litmus test of how you share that story is, did it catch fire? Did your passion catch fire with the world? Now, in today's world, there's a lot of ways that people are getting media attention. They're doing it through disruption. They're doing it through protesting. They're doing it through other ways. It is harder for a social entrepreneur to earn good media through doing something good. Don't be discouraged. Do not be discouraged. Good news doesn't feel like it travels as well as bad news. We are attuned to drama in our world. We like to tune into drama, be it Bollywood, Hollywood, Nollywood, or the news. We tend to like that intense drama. And the more intense drama we get, we're ready for the next intense drama. We have to work harder as social innovators and social entrepreneurs to tell our story of fire. That fire needs to be in our hearts, manifested in passion so profound that it's easy to amplify, it's easy to spread. It's some of the hardest work we will do as social innovators and social entrepreneurs is brand amplification. And it's the classic battle of good news, bad news. People tend to tune into bad news. It makes the headlines. Good news is hard. And the only thing that I could offer here is look at why we binge watch, Netflix, Amazon, or Bollywood movies. There's cliffhangers, there's drama, there's character development. So let's use all of that when we tell our stories. Let's talk about the characters on your team. If you're on an Enactus team or a team on a project, there's characters because you deal with them all of the time. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're dramatic, sometimes they're tough. That's good story stuff. Tell your story about impact. Tell your story about your struggles. Tell your story about your failures. And tell your success story in a way that says, we don't know what's going to happen next. It's a cliffhanger. Stay tuned. I don't know. Tune in next week. That drama will help us amplify our projects, our story, our brand, our life.
Absolutely. In fact, there's a very popular saying which goes like, work hard in silence and let your success make the noise. And so, my next question to you is of a similar tone. So people are of the notion that one should not talk about their social work. That is, if they would have helped anyone financially or in any way, they should not talk about it in public or talk about it to others. They feel that it's like boasting about the good things that you have done. So, how is this different from a social entrepreneur saying, or rather, branding his venture, saying, "Look, I am doing a business as well as affecting the society or benefiting the society." So, how is this different from an entrepreneur branding it? What is your take on this, sir?
For me, Drew, the key to your question is how. How are you
Right.
talking about? If you're boasting about your so-called social, no, you should keep your mouth shut. Sorry, you should not talk about it. They are right. But when you drill into the how, if you are doing something you're passionate about, that's giving you something back, that's joyous that you want to have others, talk about it. That's beautiful. It's the how you frame it. Is I'm having this wonderful experience. I'm working with this community full of beautiful people. And the key of knowing how to talk about it is recognize if you think that you're talking and you're just giving, don't talk. You haven't learned your lesson. It's good to be quiet.
Right.
If you realize there's an ebb and flow, you are giving and you are receiving, and it's a reciprocal. It's the tide, it's the ebb and flow. Is when I get to work in this community, I work with beautiful people. They have great stories. These children are so funny. They're so beautiful. They're so passionate. I come home energized. If you don't share that energy with the world, you're silencing the wrong story in my mind there, Drew. So it's really comes down to the essence of how you are speaking about it. If you're going about your work thinking that you're giving, 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 and you forget that you're actually receiving, it's fundamentally different. And also create a way to receive. If you give supplies, so I'll use this as examples of some tough lessons I've learned over time. We have built schools in different places around the world. We built schools next to places that were crumbled schools. I'm like, well, why are we building a school? What happened to that one over there that's crumbled? And the fundamental difference is that one over there was crumbled, was perceived to be a gift. Somebody came in and built the community, the school. They didn't ask the community if they wanted a school. They didn't engage the community in the school. They didn't say, hey, let's create bricks together. Let's do hand over hand bricks. Let's learn how to do it. It wasn't a community engagement. The community didn't ask for it. It was perceived to be a gift, and it was not. There was no exchange. So as an example, if you go into a community and you decide to supply artwork to young children, then you have an opportunity to go, hey, today we're going to create artwork. And if it's okay, let's create some artwork. And I will bring some of these pictures back to the people that provided these supplies. Okay. So now I'm receiving artwork gifts. I create artwork. I hand it back to you. It goes back to the one that created the supply. What you have just helped a young child learn about that artwork is, oh, I get to give a gift as well as receive a gift. And in essence, it's a very essence of social innovation and social entrepreneurship. You created exchange of goods and services with each other. It wasn't one-way giving to somebody who doesn't know it's a gift. It was an exchange. And if you can create that exchange, talk about that exchange, communicate that exchange, celebrate that exchange, you will have ebb and flow, and you will have something different that's beautiful in the world. Even a tree is an exchange. It takes in carbon. It spits out oxygen. It eats solar energy and light. It's an exchange. How beautiful is that? So it's really found in nature. And if we can enjoy and celebrate, then that's something to talk about.
That's very inspiring what you just said. And on that line, if you had the power to help us become less divided and less contentious as human beings, then what would you have done?
Ayushi, thank you. So we're living in a world that tends to be ripped in half, exactly half. You know, you go to the store and just look at the candy. We have so many choices of candy. We have choices of toothpaste. We have choices, choices, choices. We can walk to school, to work, on this road, that road, this road. Oftentimes, when it comes to our political scenario, we are subject to a binary choice. It's either that or this. Anytime anybody asks you, are you that or this? I would ask you to think about when they say that or this, is there a higher road? Not a road in between necessarily. Is there a higher road? That's a little of that and a little bit of this. That creates a lot of something else. There's one road this way, one road that way. If those roads are divided, there's a good chance you don't want either road, because taking a path of the lesser evil is still evil. But if you can think about what the higher road is, then you can take that one, and it's not minus one, it's 1 plus 1. But when you add 1 plus 1 and they're aligned, it equals 11. So if the higher road is the third pathway, think about questions that divide you into half. And people will impose it. They'll go, well, Dhruv, is it this or is it that? You have an opportunity to say, it's something bigger than both of those questions. Don't be caught in being ripped in half. I am coming to you live from New York, where we are ripped in half as humans in the United States. Right now, we're ripped in half. We're talking about the divide. Are you this or you're that? See, you could be more than this or that. You can take a road that's above a binary choice. So typically, if somebody's asking you a choice between this and this, there is likely a higher road, and you have the privilege, opportunity, and sometimes the duty to take a higher road, to say, yeah, nope, neither of those roads are mine. I'm going to fly over here and do this, and stay there. Stay above it. Keep the conversations. We are ripped in half, and we will continue to fall. We will fall fast. We will fail in big ways that we will not be alive to catch the lesson. We will fail the earth. We will pollute the earth. We will not achieve our 17 sustainable development goals as we continue to be ripped in half. So beware of anything that rips us in two, and then say, if I can reach out to my teammate, my community, and celebrate our differences, unite in those differences, then if we can go hand in hand, we will rise.
That was a brilliant answer, sir. And that being the last question of this episode, we have ended this podcast on a brilliant note. And I'm sure that after listening to the entire conversation, our listeners would be feeling much woke right now and aware about things happening around and how to cope up with a lot of negativity, and everything that we've covered in this podcast is just brilliant, sir. So that
Dhruv,
being
it's really fun to be here. Ayushi, thank you so much. I really, I love what you guys do. I love your podcast. I'm very interested in everything you do, and your listeners are spectacular. You have a wonderful community. I expect that next you will show with big followings, and thank you for all you do. In all sincerity, I am grateful to you. I'm grateful to your listeners, and keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
right, if this was in a physical sitting, which is not possible now in this time, we would have probably done like a handshake or like a high five. But this being in a virtual sitting, this is what we do with all our guests. Maybe we can, do a fist bump and take a snap of it. Would that work?
I think it's a namaste to a fist bump, man. We gotta change it up a little bit, don't you think, man?
Sure. We can do that.
Boom,
So,
boom, boom. I think it's a 1, 2, 3. I think it's a boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, start.